Welcome to my video on the distributive property. So when you use the distributive property, I want you to think distribute to both parts. So look at this diagram for a minute. There's candy corn outside of the brackets, and inside the brackets or parentheses is a devil and a ghost. And notice the candy gets distributed to the devil as well as the ghost. And because there was an addition sign in the middle, it stays in the middle. So the candy got distributed to both parts, because remember, number outside of parentheses means to multiply. So let's look at sum with numbers and letters. So example number 1, it says 2 parentheses 6 plus 7. So number outside of the parentheses means multiply, so we're going to distribute the 2 to both parts. So 2 times 6, then the addition sign, and 2 times 7. Now we've just used the distributive property, and that's it. So now number 2. This time the 4 is after the parentheses, but we're still going to distribute because it's still attached to the parentheses. So we're going to do 4 times 8. And now we have a minus sign, so minus 4 times 3. Now we can also do it with letters. So look at example number 3. The A needs to get distributed to the B, and the A needs to get distributed to the C. So A times B plus A times C. Now I want you to look at number 4, because instead of writing 6 times 7 minus 6 times 4, look what I wrote. 6 times 7 is 42, and 6 times 4 is 24. And then, of course, there's a subtraction sign in between them. So sometimes I can use what the numbers multiply together equal instead of using the two numbers like I did in 1 and 2. Okay? So when we use the distributive property, we want to think candy. Candy gets distributed to both parts. And as you saw if you were in class, I distributed candy to both parts of the room. So when the number outside of the parentheses is multiplied to every number inside the parentheses, this is called the distributive property. Or the candy property, because when you distribute candy, you want to make sure you do it equally to both parts. Okay, let's look at application. Now, when we do the application, on the left side, we're going to do order of operations. On the right side, we're going to do the distributive property to prove that they both equal each other. So order of operations would tell me to do parentheses first. So 6 plus 3 is 9, and 3 times 9 is 27. Now, using the distributive property, I want to make sure I distribute the 3 to the 6 and the 3. So in the first blank, I want to write 3 times 6. In the second blank, 3 times 3. And 3 times 6 we know is 18. 3 times 3 is 9. And 18 plus 9 is 27. So I just proved that order of operations and the distributive property will give us the same answer. Okay, example 2. Let's do order of operations first. So 5 minus 2 is 3, and 7 times 3 is 21. Now I'm going to do the distributive property, so 7 times 5, and then of course 7 times 2. And this time there's a minus sign inside because of the subtraction sign. 7 times 5 is 35, and 7 times 2 is 14. And 35 minus 14 is 21. Now, the distributive property is used for multiplying very large quantities. Like, for example, 6 times 99 could be done by multiplying 6 times 100 minus 6 times 1, which would be much easier than doing 6 times 99 in your head. Okay? So let's move on to which two are not examples of the distributive property. So using what we know, which two are not? So let's look at the first one. Did we do distributive property with a multiplication sign inside? No, we did not. So this is not an example. Remember, because we're looking for not example. Let's look at B. 8 times 3 minus 8 times 2. Yes, they did the distributive property correctly, so let's cross that out. This one, let's see, 5 times 7 and 5 times 6. Did they do that? Yes, so we're going to cross out that, and that must mean D is not. Now, do you remember what property D is because we're multiplying by 1? That's the multiplicative identity, and we'll cover that in a future lesson. Okay, turn the page. Now we're going to practice using the distributive property. So we're going to look at example number 1. And we're going to apply the distributive property step by step. So it says 2 parentheses 5 plus 4, so we're going to distribute the 2 to both parts. So we're going to write 2 times 5. Then the addition sign, because there's an addition sign inside the parentheses, and then we're going to do 2 times 4. 2 times 5 is 10. 2 times 4 is 8. And 10 plus 8 is 18. Let's move on to example number 2. And there's a slight delay here, so be patient here. So example number 2, the distributive property has already been done. The 4 got distributed to the 8, and the 4 got distributed to the 3. So we know 4 is outside the parentheses. What does that leave inside the parentheses? 8 minus 3. Okay, now let's finish this. 4 times 8 is 32. Minus 4 times 3 is 12. And 32 minus 12 is 20. All right, let's look at the third and final example. And there may be a delay here, so be patient. We have a 6 outside the parentheses, so we need to make sure we distribute that 6 to both numbers. So the 6 needs to get distributed to the 4, and the 6 needs to get distributed to the 2. It's already gotten distributed, to the 4 here. So now we've got to make sure we distribute it to the 2. So let me go back to what we had here. Okay, so now we distribute it to the 2, so 6 times 2. What is 6 times 4? 24. And 6 times 2 is 12. And 24 minus 12 is 12. So you've just learned the distributive property, which is a way to break down really large numbers into two smaller numbers and multiply it together to make it easier. That concludes our notes on distributive property. I hope you have a great day.